Good morning. My name is Amy McInerney, and I have the privilege to serve as the Diocesan Respect Life Director. My heartfelt thanks to Father John O'Donohue and the whole amazing team here at Holy Spirit for your hospitality. Father, thank you for a beautiful Mass this morning with your joyful words of hope in your homily. We couldn't have asked for a better kickoff to the day. So right now we have a little film for you, and then our very wonderful and busy Bishop Michael Burbidge, has made time to greet you and kick us off in prayer. So lights, camera, action.
I've lived in Virginia my whole life, and I really want my voice to be heard. We live in a country where things only happen by the power of the people when we speak up. As Christians, we have an obligation to bring the light of Christ and the truth to the public square, in conversations with people around us, and most importantly, to vote.
I was shocked by how many pro-life laws the Virginia General Assembly repealed the past session. This is what happens when people are not aware and don't vote.
The idea that we can outsource abortions to unsupervised midwives, nurse practitioners, and physician's assistants is irresponsible. It should be against every doctor's code. Abortion accomplished by taking a pill or undergoing a surgical procedure is not a simple matter. It involves risks. There is no such thing as a totally safe abortion.
When women are facing an unplanned pregnancy, they often feel the burden of wanting to keep their children, but they don't see how. Most women report feeling coerced into an abortion. Do we not want to treat these women to the truth? When they have the fullness of facts, they typically don't choose abortion.
We as citizens of this country, we need to be informed about who we're putting into these positions of power and who we are asking to pass legislation and who are asking to sign bills and who is going to be making the decisions for the well-being of every person in this country, including the unborn.
It is among my First Amendment rights as an American citizen to voice my opinion on issues that matter most to me. And as a man, I have a natural obligation to defend those who are most vulnerable, to defend unborn lives, to defend women. And the best way I can do that is by going to the voting booth and voting in candidates that I know will respect all lives.
For those of you who think that your one vote doesn't count, doesn't matter, I understand your frustration. But in 2017, here in the state of Virginia, there was an election that resulted in a tie. The winner was chosen by pulling a name out of the hat. So your vote does count. Every vote matters. I plan to vote this November, and I hope you do too. And in between elections, let's keep in touch with our representatives and let them know what kind of future we want for Virginia and America.
So let's stand together to build a culture of life.
Morning, everyone. Thank you. Thanks so much for your presence here today. These unique and challenging times, we are social distancing, but it's a great reminder we're not distanced from one another as a community of faith. So it's so great to see all of you here today as brothers and sisters in Christ, as God's holy family, especially here in the Diocese of Arlington. I wish I could stay a little bit longer with you today, but I'm celebrating Mass at 11 for all the permanent deacons in our diocese, thanking them for their ministry and for the gift they are to our church. And that's why I wanted to stop by here this morning to thank you also for the gift you are to the church and to our nation and to our diocese. Thank you so much. You're out there. You're advocates. You're witnesses. And you know how to pray. And that's what we need more than ever. That's a classic video. It's well done. It shows the problems. It shows the evil we are confronting, which makes all of us sad. But it doesn't stop there. It says, here's what we can do. And most especially voting. I was so happy when I pulled up and saw voter registration going on. Everything we can do to encourage people to let their faith, their convictions, to be known in the public arena, and how best we do that by casting that vote. As you know, dear friends, as citizens, that's our duty, right? It's our sacred duty to vote. But as Catholics, as Christians, we're not just citizens, we're faithful citizens. And we have that obligation to bring our faith into the voting booth and into our public arena. These are very challenging times, very, very challenging times, intense times. And I see it already happening in the mail and emails that I'm receiving. And so we have to do our part to be united as God's holy family while we consistently and courageously proclaim the truth. And for that reason, I stood very proudly with the bishops of the United States last November in stating clearly that the preeminent issue of our day is abortion and the protection of the unborn, as we see laws just change, go in the opposite direction. So that is the preeminent issue. It's the same statement that Bishop Nestout and I will convey to all the faithful in both dioceses in Arlington and Richmond in a letter that we will be sending out to all the parishioners with the help of Jeff Caruso, who is one of your speakers today, and the Virginia Catholic Conference. I just want to put a word of thanks into Jeff Caruso for leading the Virginia Catholic Conference. We are truly blessed to have this conference in our diocese. And I hope all of you are members and participants in the conference, because he is vigilant, he and his team, and they are constantly alerting us of the issues in our Commonwealth, and sometimes they surface in the middle of the night. And if we did not have Jeff and his team working to keep us informed, it would be a great loss. And Jeff is working so hard behind the scenes with our delegates and elected officials, trying to help them to understand what the church teaches and why we teach it. Jeff puts us in a position, Bishop Nestout and I, to have such conversations also, including with our governor and with our senators. And you can imagine they're not always the easiest of conversations, but at least we're having a conversation, and that's important. So Jeff, thanks to you and your team for your tremendous work. So dear friends, let's continue to be the witnesses of the gospel of life in all of its beauty and entirety. Let us do so by our witness, by our advocacy, and most especially in and through our prayer. We can never underestimate the powerful force that we have in our prayer. It's that force that, God willing, will convert and change the hearts of those whose hearts need to be transformed. and never think it's not possible. It's when we entrust it to the Lord, He can do miraculous things. So thank you so much. Your presence here today is a sign of your commitment. And I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy out there in the workplace, in your community, sometimes even in our own families, to have to stay strong and steadfast in what we believe. But we cannot compromise who we are and the faith that we proudly profess. So we'll continue to pray for one another, okay? It is wonderful, it's providential that you gather on the beautiful memorial of the most holy name of Mary. And she is indeed our guide and our protector and our powerful intercessor. So let's pray together. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Just listen, I invite you to listen, dear friends, to the words of St. Bernard. Call upon Mary. In danger, in distress, in doubt, think of Mary. Call upon Mary. May her name never be far from your lips or far from your heart. If you follow her, you will not stray. If you pray to her, you will not despair. If you turn your thoughts to her, you will not err. If she holds you, you will not fall. If she protects you, you need not fear. If she is your guide, you will not tire. If she is gracious to you, you will surely reach your destination. With renewed faith and profound trust, we pray, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. The Lord be with you. And dear friends, may God's blessings come upon you and upon your time together today at this conference. May you leave here refreshed and renewed and strengthened to be faithful witnesses of the gospel of life. May God bless you and all those you love and serve. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Bishop. God bless you today.
God bless.
So friends, you're in for a treat. I'm about to introduce our keynote speaker, Victoria Cobb, but first, a couple of tiny little housekeeping details. If you need to step out, the ladies' room is immediately to your right, gentlemen to the left. And as you've seen, we have hand sanitizers, masks in the back, all here for your comfort. We're trying to social distance everyone, and we hope that you are comfortable. I am thrilled to see a COVID protocol full room, plus all of the wonderful souls who are following us during this live stream. I say, take that, COVID. We got this. For those who are participating out there in TV land, we truly do want you to participate. So when it comes time for questions, there will be a question and answer panel after the three speakers have presented, and you can participate remotely by texting your questions to 414-420-9755, which number will appear on your screen, so you don't need to worry about that. Those of you here in person, you have index cards and pens available, and if you'll submit your questions in writing, we'll gather them up and make sure everyone's heard. So, without further ado, it is my privilege to present to you Victoria Cobb, who serves as president of the Family Foundation of Virginia, which means she's responsible for the vision and mission of the Commonwealth's largest and oldest pro-family organization. She's been with the Family Foundation over 20 years, president for over 15 of those years, which makes me wonder if she started in middle school. It won't surprise you to learn that Victoria is the recipient of several awards, including the 2010 Alumni of the Year from her alma mater, the School of Leadership of the University of Richmond, and the 2011 Alumna of the Year from Delaware County Christian School. She also received the prestigious Character Does Count Award from the Patriot Republican Women's Club and the 2014 Paul Weyrich Faith Community Leader of the Year Award. In addition to being a sought-after speaker, she has served on numerous boards and commissions and is currently serving on the John Jay Institute Board of Governors. Victoria holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Richmond, where she majored in political science and leadership studies. She, her husband Matt, their 2 daughters and 2 sons reside in Richmond, and we thank her for making the big trip up here. In her spare time, she enjoys running and gardening, although I don't think she has much spare time. So please help me welcome this pro-life leader and visionary, Victoria Cobb.
Well, it is truly a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. What a joy. I'm thrilled that you all decided to have this in the middle of COVID. Lots of things canceled. This does not need to be canceled. We need to trek on and keep the movement moving forward. So appreciate this. Glad that there are folks joining us online who might not be able to be here in person. Thanks to Amy and all her hard work to make this happen. On Thursday night, my organization had an event out in Charlottesville at a neighborhood clubhouse. And of course we had our protesters, which was fun. Always a treat to be out by universities. We find that tends to draw kids out. But it was interesting because after my talk, I had this gentleman come up to me and he said, "Nice homily." And I don't know if he was being facetious, like that was way too much Christianity in your speech and you really don't need that. But my thought was, well, good. I'm about to be with my Catholic friends on Saturday morning. I am ready to go. I do not dare to call my talks a homily, but it was great. So it just set the tone for me prepping for this. But seriously, though, thank you for the invitation. I am just honored to be here. And I'm honored to be here to talk about an issue that is near and dear to my heart. Obviously, the Family Foundation is a pretty broad-based organization. We do a lot of different principles that we believe are biblical, and we take those and watch how they play out in the public square and try to impact them in the way that we believe the Bible is calling us. We look at it very simply as the creator of all mankind and everything around us gave us the key to human flourishing. Why wouldn't we want our society to benefit from the knowledge that we have about how things are supposed to work? So that's kind of our premise. This is our version of loving our neighbor, is working in public policy. And we do it on a variety of things, not just life. We obviously are involved in a lot of other issues, a lot of times partnering with the Catholic Conference. Our other sort of big buckets are marriage, that we worked very closely with the Catholic Conference on the marriage amendment, and now all the sort of religious freedom challenges that come with the definition of marriage. Parental authority, making sure that as parents, God intended us to be the ones responsible. We're going to be the ones accountable for the outcomes of our kids. Let's make sure we're not letting the government do that job for us. And we engage in a number of things. Human exploitation, there's a number of issues that we've started to engage there. And now, of course, even just God's clear design for gender that is outlined so early in our scripture, we're now having to defend. But this issue of life, is the issue that drew me here in the first place. That is why I started to get into the fight. Although we do many things, this is the issue that really functionally was my call, that this was what put me in the work. And I tell people, when I was young, I was pro-life as a matter of faith. I knew he knit us together in our womb, and the scripture has so many references, actually. Like, it kind of amazes me, given the age of the scripture and just the science knowledge, but there's so much reference to the womb, and we were talking earlier about, John leaping for joy in the womb of Elizabeth. That is why I named my oldest Elizabeth, actually. But it was faith at first, because that's what I knew first. But as I got into the older years of high school and began to study science, and understood the unique DNA that is present from the moment of conception, I was pro-life by science. Science confirmed, and God doesn't expect, that we're just only on faith. He actually gives us all these tools to look around and say, wow, it all makes sense. It's actually scientific also. And then I became pro-life by experience. I had my first ultrasound, and I will tell you, you can be in the pro-life movement, you can be pushing for the legislation, but the moment you see your unborn child and you literally hear the heartbeat at 6 weeks, and you see how small this unborn child is on the screen, it's mind-boggling. And if someone doesn't have that experience, man, wow. So it became that I was pro-life as a matter of experience when I was a mother. And then I'll share this. I would say that I became more pro-life actually out of grief. We lost our first child in an ectopic pregnancy. And honestly, it was fairly early on in the pregnancy. We had hardly had time to celebrate that we were pregnant before we lost this child, but yet I felt the grief. Why? Because that's what God puts in your heart. That's what motherhood is. Anyone who's had a miscarriage of any type understands. So it's like you become even more pro-life in that loss, in that experience, in understanding that surely that was a human life that was about to be a part of your family. So our journeys to being pro-life come at different directions for different reasons, but we're so thankful that God gives us 100 reasons why we should be standing for the unborn. And despite the fact that I was only pro-life because of my faith at a young age, I actually received my call to battle for the unborn at a young age. It was actually in the 6th grade, which I have children now that are this age. I have one that's 9th grade and one that's 7th grade, and I think to myself, my heavens, that's crazy, because my kids have no clue what their call is. But I'll tell you, I was in the 6th grade, and it was the age I really started to think about this issue. And I can crystal clear, as clear as yesterday, I remember my friend Susan having to give a persuasive speech. And it was on the issue of abortion is still wrong in the case of rape and incest. That was not something I had ever heard. I just hadn't been around that. And I went, she's absolutely right. A life is a life, even when the circumstances aren't what we would want those circumstances to be. And I then was assigned a writing project, and I applaud my school, actually, really, for doing these kind of things. I went to a Christian school, and they really did try to engage us on the matters. But I had a writing assignment that was write a fictional story that integrated a cultural issue. So I actually wrote a story about this judge named Amy, who was actually post-abortive, and had to decide the question of abortion. So obviously young, clearly did not understand civics, didn't realize there are 9 judges on that court, and it's not that simple. But that was the passion already brewing up in me, and it was from that point forward I decided I wanted to follow this path. Now I thought that was being a judge, right? So I thought that meant I had to go be a judge. So, my high school, you have to do like one of those career projects, so I interviewed a judge. That was very disenfranchising. It was a local judge, and honestly, she got the job because her husband had died and he had been a judge, and I didn't even know that was a thing. This was in Pennsylvania. Maybe it's not a thing here. But honestly, it was sort of like, but I stayed on that course. I said, okay, well, maybe that's how you get to the, maybe you have to go through sort of, because, the issues that you do at the local level, they weren't very interesting things. But anyway, I sort of followed that path, and I kind of went down the pre-law track. And then somewhere along the path, I realized, oh, there's this advocacy arm. There's the justice side, but there's also who creates the laws and who advocates for the laws. And it was actually really exciting to sort of learn that that was a piece of this. So literally, that is sort of how I decided to do what I do. And I think back and I think that 6th grade call was 30 years ago that this path started. So when we talk about length of engagement, I'm going to talk a lot about that today, that it is not a short-term thing. It is not a quick win thing. Anybody who's been in this movement knows this is a long haul, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So that's how I got on that path, and once in a while I'll meet somebody that they've met me for the first time and they don't know much about our organization, and they'll say, what made you decide to do this with 4 children? And I'll look at them and say, no, that would actually be insane if you started this after having 4 children. I did this long before. God just hasn't released me from this call, so I just keep figuring out how to make it work, which is what everybody does, right? When he calls you to something, You do it until you're called to something else. And so that's just kind of my story. And I knew back then it was the tragedy of our day. And unfortunately, 30 years later, it is still the tragedy of our day. That has not changed. And I tell people that if you've ever seen the movie Chariots to Fire, it's about a runner, and he has this great phrase, Eric Liddell. He says, "When I run, I feel God's pleasure," because he's using the gifts and talents that he has in the direction that God designed him to use them. That is, for me, that is how I feel when I'm in the pro-life movement, that I am designed this way, and to experience that great joy of using your gifting as God called you to do. And so I know there's a lot of people that are working in this pro-life movement that are hoping that they will be working and actually get to see the moment when Roe versus Wade is overturned, right? That's the end game for a lot of us. Now, it's not an end game. If you know about Roe, it actually just means it goes back to the states and we have more work to do. But there's a lot of people who think, I want to be here for that moment. However, I will tell you, I don't see anywhere in Holy Scriptures where we're called to always get to see the fruit, to always get to the win, right? You could be searching for the promised land for 40 years and never get to enter. This is truth. This is truth that we're called to live by. And this is the topic of what I want to say this morning, is what is our motivation and how serious are we about our commitment? Are we called to overturn Roe, or are we called to be faithful advocates of the unborn in every way and save every life we can and change every mind we can and help every woman we can? Or is it just about some, sort of one victory moment that we're waiting for? If your motivation is to, if it's complete perfect victory, if that's what your motivation is, you're going to find that falls short. You might find that you give up prematurely. You might find that you don't have the staying power it takes to endure the hardships that come along with the battle. Lately, I've been asked by a lot of folks, well, how are your spirits? Because obviously we've had a big change in our legislature, and it could be rather depressing. And sometimes I'm actually surprised I feel as upbeat as I do when you actually sort of calculate what's happened in our Commonwealth, because it is hard to see your life's work go up in smoke. It is. I mean, it is hard. We have spent the last 20 years at the Family Foundation working on these pro-life laws, and they literally basically all did get undone in one bill, almost everything, with almost no debate. I mean, it is hard to see that. All these guys have been in this as long as I have, or longer in some cases, and it is painful. And it's not just the life issue. We work on the marriage issue. It's hard to do all that work to pass a state constitutional amendment to define marriage and then see one judge, it's 9 again, but you know what I mean? It's like, it all goes away. And so you can have that mindset. But the reason I don't despair is because I wasn't called to win everything. God didn't say, if you do this, I'll guarantee success. He says, you do it for my glory. So when that's your call, when it's not about winning, and frankly, it's not about you, you can handle whatever setbacks come your way. And even the really, really big setbacks. And boy, have we had a lot of really, really big setbacks. It doesn't take much to look around right now in the moment that we're in as a society and see the chaos and confusion that abound in almost every sector of our society, and sort of feel that, moment, I wish this weren't happening. But you know what? I will say, I was trying to come up with a word. I was trying to explain what I see when I look around, and it almost feels like we're having a societal meltdown. Like just this little meltdown, like a toddler tantrum in every area, But I will tell you, it is the natural outpouring of what's been happening in our homes, our schools, and our churches for a lot of decades. The fact is, if mom and dad don't teach self-control, if they don't teach personal responsibility, if they don't teach a moral compass, if schools aren't teaching history and civics, right? And if our churches, some of them, are not brave enough to stand on right and wrong and bring the conviction of the Holy Spirit, right? If that's all kind of happening, then unfortunately sometimes the outcomes are going to be, riots in the streets and destruction. This is to say, what we're seeing in our uncivil discourse, in our social media tantrums, in the cities literally being on fire, is a result of more than a moment. It's the result of a period of time. And I hear people say, it's when they took the Bible out of public school that everything went south. Sure, not a good moment for our country, but we all know there's 100 decisions that have happened, 100, and in Virginia, we know very well, our public policy decisions have created a lot of bad things. We have not taken a lot of right courses. We know that that's played a significant role. And for years, we had people in office who might have held our values, but were they champions of our values? Were they out actually pushing forward, drawing people towards life? Not necessarily. And you know what happens? If we're looking for sort of deeper root causes, if it's hard for us to demand that our politicians stand and be brave if all of our churches, our churches aren't even doing that, right? If all of our churches aren't aggressively pushing forward the life message and doing everything we can, right? We can't expect more out of our representatives than we're willing to give ourselves. And honestly, what happens if you have politicians that have the bully pulpit, don't use it for the causes that they need to, I believe they end up forfeiting the right to power. And that has essentially what we have seen. And our worldview, our Christian worldview suggests that without a counterforce, chaos does prevail, right? Without pushback, naturally, things are going to destruct. Fallen people are going to choose fallen leaders every day of the week, right? That makes sense. Without insight, without scripture, without us being able to know truth and embrace it, that's kind of a natural outcome, right? Because you can get all the benefits with none of the personal responsibility. With fallen leaders, you can, I tell people I sort of feel like there's been this unwritten social contract that we've had that we haven't talked about necessarily, but the idea was you try to be a semi-productive member of society, and you're generally kind, and then ultimately, that leads to the privileges that happen with income and healthcare and all these things that kind of come out of general productivity and kindness. And we kind of are having a whole group of people saying, no, we're not part of that. We don't know kindness, we don't know productivity. And now it's kind of gotten to a tipping point because there's enough of those kind of folks who have said, no, I haven't bought into this idea of love your neighbor or, these basic concepts of I should try to help our society, right? So we have this kind of meltdown going on, which is painful. And then we see a natural disregard for human life in all stages, right? So now it's not just a disregard for the unborn. We're seeing disregard for human life just sort of generically in many cases. Yesterday, I guess it was a couple days ago, I watched another clip. They were just showing a clip. It wasn't current, I guess, but it was a couple weeks ago, of a city on fire. And I'll tell you, as I was thinking about this issue of injustice, right? So they're trying to address an issue, but maybe not in the way. And I literally was praying over this, and what I heard God say was, well, this is a lot of people who don't know me trying to address an issue. How do you think they're going to address it? And I kept thinking, what if the church leads on issues so we don't have to leave it to people who don't see the light, who aren't called to love their neighbor, to try to address these problems, right? So if the church leads on the issues of our day, we're going to see better outcomes. And that's true of the abortion issue. That is true of the life issue. The church sees the injustice that is with the issue of the unborn and abortion, and the church needs to lead the path. We will be so much better as a society when we take our role as leaders, when we help our elected officials, when we vote, when we have the conversations with elected officials. That's our call, and that's going to get us to a much better solution in our society. The left, the folks who are looking at abortion and saying it needs to be legal, they're trying to solve a poverty issue, they're trying to solve a woman in crisis issue, but they're doing it in a way that they don't know truth in life, right? We can work on poverty, we can give these women support and have life because we understand how that all fits together. It's our job as the church to lead. And that is our call. Now, I will say, you might think, well, you're kind of being kind of pessimistic. You're talking about like, we might not have wins and we're in it for the long haul. And certainly that's fair. But I would say this, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. And I think most people who would know me just would say I'm highly practical. And I know that this is just not a short game. And anyone who's been in this knows this is a long haul. And, right now we're kind of in a bummer moment. Let's just be honest, we're kind of in a bummer moment. And maybe we'll start right back to Roe. Decades of work to overturn Roe and Casey and these decisions that have left us with thousands and hundreds of thousands of millions of lives that are lost to abortion. So then we had this tremendous excitement, right? All this excitement about new justices to the Supreme Court. And, they're going to rewrite they're going to rewrite this law and all this stuff. And, a little before that, so in 2016, we have this Hellerstedt decision that comes out of the Supreme Court. Oh, gosh. Before we can even get to these new justices, we have a 5-3 decision. And if you're not familiar with the Hellerstedt case, it was common sense safety standards and those kind of things out of Texas that were on the line. And I'll tell you, of course, it happened before we were able to add Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and some of these who are, pro-life justices, but it was devastating. And an honest reading of that case kind of goes, wow, they expect the court to decide abortion law. I mean, it really was like, is it the legislature doing this job, or we're going to expect the court? Because essentially they were saying, well, in order to understand whether we can have safety standards, we have to know the population of the state and how many clinics there are. I mean, literally, they expect the court to do the demographic work to make sure this is enough access. I mean, it was a stunner. It was painful. Okay, so then flash forward. Okay, we've got some new justices. I think we were all going, okay, they say they're pro-life. We think they came on a pro-life, sort of endorsed list. And then this past June, we get to a decision, June Medical. It was June Medical Services versus Caruso. And the question before the court was yet another sort of safety, common sense thing. So this was about whether abortion doctors need to have admitting privileges to a local hospital. Does there need to be some kind of ability when things go south to make sure that they can connect to that hospital? Well, pro-lifers waited with bated breath, and we got a terrible decision out of that. It was devastating. We had the court say no because we already decided Hellerstedt. We got to kind of keep going down this train. Even the guy who opposed Hellerstedt said, well, we got to follow this precedent. And we all, devastation. We thought, wow. And I'll be honest with you, you really do have to realize that feels like the cementing of bad precedent. It feels like, wow, instead of going the other direction, we're like pounding in bad law. How are we ever going to get to a place where we save the unborn? So if you want to, you can be totally depressed about this. And if you're in it for the short game and you need the win, you're going to bow out. You're going to go, we're not making any headway. We might as well just sort of bail out. And at this moment, we sit at this pivotal moment. We're going to have an election. We're going to have a new president. It's either this one that we have or another one, and they're going to probably have some more appointees to the Supreme Court. We know Ginsburg is probably going to retire at some point. There may be others. So we sit here. We're at an unknown. It could get better. It could get worse. That's the moment that we're in. So now come down to the state level. So let's think about the state level. And you could say, wow, boy. Last November, we elected a pro-abortion majority in both the House and the Senate. So now we have more pro-abortion mindset than we do pro-life mindset. And they came alongside a governor who had been very clear where he stood on the unborn issue, painfully clear. So, right, we had our governor who said, you have the baby, then you keep it comfortable, then you make a decision. Talk about jaw drop. Even from people who might not be as pro-life as you and I, they were a little stunned. But what's interesting about that is the governor is actually fairly consistent with his abortion mindset. And most people, if they really are honest with themselves, the difference between before and after is a birth canal and a couple of seconds. He's pro-abortion, he's pro-infant death. That shouldn't surprise us because there's not much difference. We believe it's been a life for 9 months before that. It's going to be a life for the rest of its life. He's consistent. But now we have this pro-abortion majority that joins our pro-abortion governor. And what did the governor with 2 chambers that he could work with do? Well, to say that, let me backtrack for 1 second a little bit about our history. So Roe became law, 1973. But as early as 1975 in Virginia, we said, if we're going to have an abortion, it's going to be a doctor that does that abortion. Then fast forward a lot of years where not a lot of pro-life progress could happen. We get to Governor Allen's administration, and we at least get parental consent, at least this idea, notification, at least this idea we're going to tell a parent when a teenage daughter embraces this decision. Fast forward a little bit more, early 2000s, we were able to get some informed consent. We would at least give brochures with pictures of gestational ages, so a mother at least knew this isn't a blob of tissue, as they were told in the, back in the day. We were at least going to inform them, and we got a 24-hour waiting period. Let's at least make sure no one is coerced into an abortion. So let's at least do that. Fast forward through the years of Governor Warner, and then I'm personally pro-life, but then did a ton to advance abortion, Governor Kane. So we had some interesting years there that were very confusing. But then we get to the McDonnell administration, and we actually started to make some traction again as a pro-life effort. We had enough pro-lifers in the legislature. The governor was enough pro-life. So finally we were starting to, so we had one critical law that changed the landscape of abortion. And it was a bill you heard about first, probably, unfortunately, being mocked on nightly comedy shows like Rachel Maddow and others. But it was the window to the womb bill. It was this idea, totally mischaracterized on all these shows, of course. But the concept was really simple. When an abortion is done, and when an abortionist already does the ultrasound, let's make sure the woman has the chance to see it. Let's make sure she is privileged to her own medical testing. That's the concept. It's really not rocket science. We get our own tests all the time and whatever medical decision we're making, but somehow this one had to be hidden, and we're saying, no, let the woman see ultrasound. And we were excited that part of that bill was to have the Department of Health list where you could go to get a free ultrasound. So we put advertising for the pregnancy resource centers and all these pro-life entities on our Department of Health website. It was exciting times. It was also during the McDonnell administration, we restored fully the safety standards so that at least if a woman is going to make a decision that you and I would not choose to make, at least it's not risking both the unborn life and her life. And we know, obviously, that when safety standards have been put in place in other places, the abortion industry prefers the dollar than they want to help the health of the woman, obviously, because they clearly don't have a regard for human life. And so we know in other places, when we pass those kind of laws, clinics have chosen to shut down rather than actually rise to standards. And that happened here in Virginia. So we actually saw this amazing decrease of the clinics that are available. Then we had the McAuliffe years, which very careful we need to be paying attention to because he's running for governor again, so we could have a repeat of the McAuliffe years. But we had the McAuliffe years, and he said, if you remember, that governor said, I will be a brick wall for reproductive rights. I'm going to make sure nothing happens. And I laughed last year on a radio show. He actually said, I tried to be the brick wall of reproductive rights, and Victoria Cobb tried to be the sledgehammer. And I thought, what an honor. There's nothing more I'd rather be called. There were some other sledgehammers involved with all of that. I laugh because this compliment ranked right up here with one that we had this past session where I'm sitting in a committee and the woman next to me is texting her friend, I am sitting next to the worst person in Virginia. And I thought, awesome, I'm working on being the worst person in the US for those liberal pro-abortion folks. So eventually, and then we'll get to world champion for the pro-abortion movement. That's the goal, right? We're known by our enemies. It is not expected that the whole world will agree with us, and that's okay. And I encourage you to just embrace that and say, that is the call for life. Sometimes people will not agree with us. Doesn't mean you're offensive, doesn't mean you're an obstacle. It means that you are simply working to advance the cause of the unborn. And there were people who walked away from Jesus. I can't imagine anybody more winsome, anybody with the more right message, and there were people that walked away. That's okay. Anyway, so McAuliffe put a Board of Health, deconstructed our health standards. So then, they repealed the whole thing. We were thrilled at the Family Foundation to realize they were doing it illegally, the way they did it. We went after them with a lawsuit. We're thrilled to win and have a judge say, yeah, you actually have to leave those in place because you did it illegally. That only lasted for a period of time, as you know. But you fight the battle, you fight the moment you're in, you hold the standards as long as you can. So fast forward to this 1 year, now we have a bill that has struck down nearly every pro-life law that we've passed since 1975. The only exception really is the parental consent. That's the next battle. They left that one alone. They left the notion of informed consent. There's still words, but there's nothing to it, so there's really not informed consent, but that's still there. I'm surprised they don't try to strike the words out to, just be honest about where they're at. And I was shocked that anyone would consider repealing a law that ensures that a woman is going to get an abortion that she doesn't have a doctor. I was shocked that anyone would repeal a law that ensures that women have full consent, including the right to see their ultrasound. I mean, we do this in every other area. I'm sure you were shocked. I was shocked that anyone would consider repealing a law that helps people prevent coerced abortion by allowing women at least 24 hours to think about it. That seems reasonable. And I know we were all shocked with every component. Health and safety. Most people agree we should have health and safety. You and I know this is the human rights crisis of our day. But I want to show you something that should give you some hope. You don't think our work mattered? Let's take a look. We've got a PowerPoint. He's going to pop up here for a second. I want to show you a little chart.
There may be a little cable noise.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Yep, right there. Perfect. And then we're just going to have to click through a little bit. That's all right. All right, so we're not on the screen. Should we?
I'm not a theologian, but I do believe that Satan
Is in the technology. I agree.
He won't come up.
Just give it one. All right. Well, let's see. Where is that coming from?
Yeah, why?
It's interesting. Is that coming from that one?
Yeah, it worked before.
All right. Well, so what I wanted to show you is that there's a remarkable trend line that goes along with these laws. We put it into a graph that literally shows the years these laws were passed and the abortion trend line. And essentially what you would see when you see this is that it goes from about 25,000 abortions a year, dropping, to about 14,000 abortions a year in 2018. It is incredible how much all that work affected the unborn. If your job is to overturn Roe, you might be disappointed, but if your job is to save every life you can in every way you can, help every woman you can, you add those years up. So let's just say the trend line had stayed the same, not even gone up, but it went down. You add those years up, if it had stayed the same instead, 52,000 unborn babies in 7 years were not aborted because of all those difficult victories and all those years and all the times that you emailed your legislator, you voted, you showed up, and in most recent years, you went to the March for Life. It matters not a little. It matters a lot. And the people who worked from 1975 to 1990, whatever it was, where they saw basically no gains in the life effort, boy, I mean, hard stuff. But then eventually, you start making traction and you start saving lives. And that doesn't even account for, just think about during that time, the pregnancy centers flourished more and more and more across Virginia. The number compared to abortion clinics, the abortion clinics went down, pregnancy centers went up, lives were saved, and that's all of the work that's been going on throughout this time. It's a lot of hard work, and not just by my organization, but by Jeff's and Olivia's, and by every person every pregnancy center that came to testify. They actually had to come and sort of explain their work to our legislators who are clueless that there's so much support out in the community. By the post-abortive women who were willing to share their stories, by all those emails, all the pro-life encouragement of vote this way, you name it, that work truly mattered. Every sign that was put up for a pro-life candidate, every door that was knocked for a pro-life candidate, every lobby day that pro-lifers came out, that's what it took, and that's what we got. We had hundreds of motorcyclists come out for our Ride for the Unborn to make a statement to say, hey, this matters enough, because that's not the typical crowd they expect to see. They think all pro-lifers, look like you and I and drive in our little, my SUV or whatever. No, these are people, and what's cool is a lot of that crowd had experienced, it tended to be a lot of men who had experienced pressuring someone for an abortion. So it was like the other side that you don't hear about as much. And they stood up and said, I was wrong, I grieve that loss, I grieve with the mother of that child, and I want to make my voice heard. And most recently, the thousands that showed up for the March for Life. We've had 2 of them now, the first one, the second one. First day was a little bit sunnier than the second day. You saw a little bit of footage from it, but just an amazing statement. If you were there, you saw the legislators come out to see, and they will tell you that first March for Life, the only crowd we've ever seen of that size was the one time when Franklin Graham came and preached on the Capitol lawn. Short of that, there just hasn't been, and now there's been the gun rally. I don't know if that was a big one now this year, but that first March for Life, they had never had a crowd advocate for an issue of that size. It made a tremendous impression. And one of the last things I was going to show you was a short clip that we put together that had the majority leader at the time of the Senate went on radio, and he was asked about, it was just an interview about special veto session that one day. That's when we had the March for Life, the first one. And he was, talk about all the bills that passed, talk about, what was vetoed. And you know what he said? He said the most important thing that happened that day did not happen inside the building. It happened outside the building. That was Senator Norman's takeaway from the March for Life. Why does that matter? It stays in their head. And when they get choices about pro-life, pro-choice bills, when they're looking at that legislation, they have that image of, wow, these are voters. These are voters in my district. This makes a difference. So let's just sort of pull all this together. We may not see Roe overturned in our lifetime. We don't know. We don't know what God has in store. We might not see Casey overturned. We might be dealing with this Heller stat, this June medical, these terrible decisions. That might not be. We might not have personhood guaranteed during the work that we do. We just don't know what God has in store. But I will tell you, that's not our call. That's not our call. Our call is to save one more life today than we saved yesterday, to tell one more person, to support one more woman, to register one more person to vote and tell them why they need to vote pro-life. Our task at hand is to move the life issue forward and save lives. This year, we're going to have to make some wise choices at the ballot box about who selects our next Supreme Court. We're going to have to pay attention to whether we give 60 senators to confirm good pro-life judges if they get put on that list for the U.S. Supreme Court. There's a lot on the line. For us to kind of go, well, I'm tired, we've had some depressing things happen, I don't really feel like it, that's not our call. Next year, we're going to have to decide who we're going to replace Governor Northam with. So we know we have a pro-abortion governor there. Thankfully, they can't rerun. We have that one benefit. They can rerun non-consecutively, which is why we're seeing McAuliffe come back, Governor McAuliffe come back, is because he can run twice, he just can't run twice in a row. So we can't have Northam at least for this next 4 years, but we're going to have to make some choices about our governor. And is the call more than just casting a vote at the ballot box? I would say yes. I would say it's doing what you can with your time, with your talent, with your treasure for his kingdom. It's volunteering at the Pregnancy Resource Center. It's standing outside an abortion center praying. I'm so thankful. I have an abortion center within a mile of my house. And when I cannot tell you just for years and years, there was no one praying outside this center because Planned Parenthood draws more attention. So a lot of them are outside the Planned Parenthoods. This is an independent abortion center. And finally, a group started coming to pray at least one day a week. And I cannot tell you, because my deal is every time I pass it, I'm praying. So, and it's great that it's so close because you do pass it a lot. That's the upside of having it so close. So maybe that's where you need to put your time, is praying outside an abortion center. Our more political arm, so we have sort of the education arm, and then we do the more political things to advance the life cause in the election, has already called 80,000 homes and knocked 30,000 doors in one district where we need, telling that district that we have a pro-abortion congresswoman and we need to make a change. That phone banking, that is so easy. Man, it robo-dials, it is so fast, and you just have this pro-life message. Did you know that she votes this way? I just want to make you aware before you go to the ballot box that that's kind of who you're represented by right now. It's actually so easy. You can give an hour here, an hour there, go out and help these folks take this registration stuff to every Catholic church, make sure all your peers are registered. This is the slow work that culminates in 52,000 lives saved over 7 years. And I will tell you, interestingly enough, there was actually an article on Virginia Public Radio, which is not really usually our friend. But it was about how we were basically one of the leading states in the country on the abortion decline. So the national average was about 20-some%, and we were at 41% over 7 years. Why were we at 41%? Because there is some natural decline, because the message of human life and the beautiful color ultrasounds, they're making a difference. But why were we double? Because we were passing these laws saying a woman needs to see her ultrasound because we need safety standards. That work was making a difference here in Virginia. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And there's one more thing. The pro-abortion crowd in Virginia is not done yet. I told you they wiped away almost everything. Next year, they will introduce an amendment where they want to add to our Virginia Constitution an amendment that would entrench into our Constitution the right to an abortion. Much harder to move things out of the Constitution, much harder to do anything once it's in the Virginia Constitution. You know what they want to call that amendment? You know what they labeled it when they showed us the language this year? The Reproductive Personal Liberty Amendment. Boy, that sounds good. We like personal liberty. Boy, that's the battle that we have coming. We have parental consent. They still haven't wiped that out. And then this idea of we're going to ensure that forevermore you can't make any restrictions on abortion. They're not done yet. That's right around the corner. That's going to be a 2-year battle. It takes 2 years. You've got to go through the legislature twice with an election in between, and then you end up with a ballot box. If you were involved with the marriage amendment, you remember how exhausting that whole thing is. That's next if we don't make our change. I set my alarm so I would not go over, and thankfully, we're on the very last point. So, to prepare for that, I just want to say, we need you to engage. I had a slide that had the text number to sign up, but if you are not yet connected to getting our email alerts, getting our texts, I do have sign-up sheets sitting. You'll see the back bleacher. There's a whole slew of great information. There are sign-up sheets. If you are not getting our email, not getting our texts, we have a text-to-watch thing where literally when they debate the abortion bill, we'll give you a text that have a live link so you can watch that debate in that moment. So I encourage you, we're creating speak-up teams across Virginia. These are local grassroots teams of people to engage your local issues and the state level issues, timely texts, timely emails, all that stuff. You can, if you are a cell phone, easy text person, you can pull out your cell phone. I'll give you a text number and you can just, so if you want to do that, I can get you, and it'll just take you right to the landing page. So if you're not technology, sheet in the back, use pen and paper, totally great. If you are technology, you just text to the number 72572. 72572. I'm sorry, you're not seeing it. It's a little easier. 72572. Text the word speak up, and it'll take you to the landing page, and you can go that way. So in closing, if our call is to respect life is just about seeing victory, pack it in right now, if that's all that we're about. But it's not. Let's be faithful in each and every task. Our vote, our voice, and maybe one day we will see victory. Thanks.
Thank you, Victoria. So, who knew? I was right. She did start in middle school. So, thank you. That was inspiring. And as I like to say, I'm sure you've heard me say this before, I'm not a theologian, but I am pretty convinced Satan lives in the technology. So apologies. I don't know why it worked before, but didn't now. So our next speaker is boots on the ground in this movement for a long time and can best be described, I think, as a force of nature. Olivia Gans Turner is president of the Virginia Society for Human Life, the first organized state pro-life group in the country. It was founded in 1967. Since her own abortion in 1981, she is committed to protecting unborn children and their mothers under the law from the violence of abortion. At the national level, Mrs. Turner works with the National Right to Life Committee, and she's spoken in all 50 states and 17 countries. You probably will recognize her face because she's often been on EWTN and many other media outlets and has appeared regularly before Congress defending human life. She is a familiar face at the General Assembly and brings her experience to the debate in Virginia, and I know you will be glad she's on our team as well. Help me welcome Olivia Gans Turner.
Hello, everybody. I am so glad we're here together. This is wonderful. Look at this, a room full of people. I'm a little unnerved. I'm a little excited. I don't know what to feel. I'm really thrilled. Like Victoria said, to be together in one place, finding ways to do things is wonderful. I want to thank Victoria. You gave me a springboard. That's you launched me off with the bulk of what my talk is going to be about. I also want to say I didn't know that about your 6th grade calling. Now I'm going to remind you of that when we're at the General Assembly together. Victoria and Jeff and I are colleagues on the ground at the General Assembly, and we do work cooperatively. It's been a wonderful experience forming a relationship where we're on the same side. We do bring different groups of people, different things together. Because the Family Foundation has a multi-issue approach, they're able to touch on things that VSHL cannot. Catholic Conference is the same way. Both the Catholic Conference and VSHL work on pro-life stuff along with Family Foundation, but sometimes we step out, because I'll tell you, VSHL, unlike the Catholic Conference or the Family Foundation, is very single-issue focused. Our primary focus has been, since our founding in 1967, before Roe v. Wade, on the life issues. So our key issues are abortion, infanticide, euthanasia, and what that means now, which is assisted suicide, and medical health care rationing. So any effort within the law to actually directly attack or deny any individual their right to life, that's our issue. That's when we step up and step in. We are the state affiliate of the National Right to Life Committee, and we pre-exist the National Right to Life Committee because here in Virginia, the effort was made in 1967 to change our laws. Some of you in this room have been engaged with us. Some of you are members of VSHL. I'm delighted to see some of our members who live up here in the Northern Virginia area. I know some of you are watching on the live stream, and I'm delighted that you tuned in. I'm also delighted to see a variety of new faces, because I think we'd all agree here that you're here today because, as Victoria stressed, something in you has called you. You tuned into the live stream because you are called to be more engaged, to be more aware, to participate at a deeper level. Some of you have been actively working for years. And I think it is important what Victoria said. We do what we do, and those of you who are Catholic who are watching, those who may not be Catholic, you probably do this for the same call. You do what we do because it is just, because it is the right thing to do. We do not do this because we're going to get any prizes at the end of the day. We don't do this for any other reason other than it is what is good and right. And our defenseless brothers and sisters, whether they're the unborn, a mother who is panicking because she's dealing with a complex pregnancy, a family who's dealing with the birth of a disabled child, people dealing with the elderly care we're all dealing with so often these days as empty nesters suddenly become cared for by their older children. All of us are dealing with stresses and strains we didn't know. So for this point in time, for you to be with us today in one capacity or another, you are here because you personally have been called. I also believe strongly that no one in the movement can be replaced, ever. Someone else may come along and do the job. They'll do it a little differently. But you are here for this moment in time because we are meant to be here for this moment in time. I also want to say something quickly, just as a point of clarification. I want to make sure everybody in the room knows there are no state office elections this November. So you're calling this year to encourage each other to vote, to make sure your neighbors and friends are registered, to engage people in that part of this conversation. This is all about national offices, which are stinking important, I would think we'd all agree right now. They have a fairly high level of importance on our registry of things to worry about. But we have some excellent people running throughout the state who are pro-life. Now, I want to explain a tiny bit more about VSHL. We are an agency with 3 components. We have been from the very beginning. We have our C3 educational arm, which does strictly educational events. This is sort of kind of in the middle of that. This is predominantly a C3 event, so I'm here educating you. We also have our C4, which is where I work with Jeff and Victoria all the time, lobbying, advocating for legislation, negotiating and working with our legislators to understand the power and importance of pro-life law. And that is our C4 branch. And then we also have a political action committee. We are the only single issue political action committee in the state, and we will and already have endorsed a slate of candidates. If you're interested, again, go to vshl.org, sign up, become a member. There's a petition right now on there that I will explain in a minute. It will immediately identify you. You won't get pestered, but you will get information about everything that's going on, including the election, who we believe are the stronger candidates. A comparison piece is going to be made available very soon. You'll be able to see where individual candidates stand and make your decisions accordingly. So we believe strongly in education, various kinds of education, because we believe if those of us who are in this room right now do not gather enough information and then take it back where we go, we fail. I'm with you today. You're all getting to meet me. Some of you I know, many I do not. Guess what? I will never meet the people you will meet, more than likely. Now, you could all invite me to your parishes, and I'd be delighted to come. You could invite me to your clubs, and I'd be delighted to come virtually. I'm really good at Zoom these days. I'm doing a number of Zoom events in different parts of the state because it's going to be almost impossible to get this kind of thing going everywhere. I happen to live up here, so it was easy to hybrid this. But I'm all about the Zoom. I even have my Zoom makeup on today. So we know what we're doing now on this front. We know what we're doing, and nothing will stop us, is the point. As Victoria was stressing, nothing will stop us because we do what we must do because it is right to do so. Now, I have been asked to focus my talk primarily on what Victoria launched us off with, which is the major threat that we see at VSHL for next year's session. I'm glad that she stressed the idea of long haul, because I also am a history minor. I was a major in music and theater in college. I was a minor in history. And if there's one thing I know about the way the American government moves, it's pretty stinking slow most of the time. Things change very slowly. Not quite as slow as the Catholic Church, but pretty slowly. Pretty slowly. It took us 300 years. I always tell people, think about this in terms of our pro-life issue. We're all aware that little babies are dying. We're aware that elderly people and people with disabilities have their lives threatened on a daily basis now because of the pressure for doctor-assisted suicide or for medical health care rationing that's deciding, oh, you're too old for that kind of care, you can't have it anymore. We know that there's pressures like that. We know that babies die right now while we are here. The abortion facilities around Northern Virginia are ending the lives of precious babies like my own. We know that. We know that their mothers are being permanently harmed, damaged, and wounded. We know that families are being destroyed by what's happening. So we are anxious, and we sometimes become overwhelmed and maybe feel a sense of panic. But one thing I know as a history minor, and all my history friends in the room will know this, it takes time for things to change in this culture. It took us, we're talking, everybody's hearing about the phrase 1619, that's been on the news a lot lately. Well, it's took us 300 years to get from then to the Emancipation Proclamation, as an example of how society moves. It took another 100 years to get to the Civil Rights Amendment in the 1960s. Many of you remember when President Johnson signed that. And here we are today, watching our country agonize and weep and hurt each other over the same old, ugly, tragic issue. So my point is, much of this is connected to human nature. So like the workers in the vineyard, I am only called to do one thing, which is pick the grapes on the vine in front of me. So do not become afraid and do not panic. If you pick enough grapes, you will have done your job and done it well. So that's what you're talking about right now. Now, legislatively, you do need to become aware. Faithful citizenship in the video is an excellent place to start from. We are supposed to be faithful citizens. What does that mean? It doesn't just mean going to church on Sunday and kneeling down for a few minutes afterwards and praying. It means knowing things about who I am as an American citizen living in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm going to embarrass everybody. Do you know who your delegate is? Raise your hand if you do. There are a number of people who did not raise their hands in this room. Maybe you can't see that on the live stream. I can. At home, did you raise your hand? Because if you didn't, shame on you. You must, as a faithful citizen, discover the name of your delegate. You can do that by going to the VSHL website on our legislative center. We have a legislative connection on our website. You can find it out there. You can go to the Virginia General Assembly, type in your zip code, you'll know your delegate. Do you know the name of your state senator? Raise your hand. More of you seem to know who your state senators are. Not all. I believe everybody in this room appears, not one or two may not be over 18, but even if you're not over 18, you need to know who your state delegate and state senator are. Do you know who your congressperson is? Okay, good job. Federal people more aware. Do we know who our two states, our U.S. senators are? Good. Not all, not every name. Do we know who the president is? Okay, you get my point. You cannot be a faithful citizen if you do not know who represents you in your state government and your federal government. You are not being a faithful citizen. You have failed, number one, already. And in order for us to do this, we must be engaged in a way that takes us beyond, they annoy me, they're stupid, I don't like the way they vote, I think they're rotten, they wouldn't listen to me anyway. I don't care, I still want to know who they are. So you can do that, number one, when you leave here today. That's assignment number one. Number two is to become aware of what's going on legislatively. We've been in a weird, there was a special session that was called, a lot of stuff came up, nothing specifically connected to the pro-life issue. We were watching, I wondered if they might sneak something in. Nothing jumped up and down. There were some questions that I know Victoria was dealing with on other issues, and I think Jeff may talk to that. So there was stuff going on that was problematic and troublesome. We do try to monitor. We monitor as much as we can, everything that's going on. They will come back in session in January. The General Assembly will come back in session in January, in early January. And the process then will be very similar to what we faced last year, because there is no chance for change this November, which means we are going to be faced with a juggernaut again of pro-abortion agenda-driven items. Last year, I think we counted a total of 14 different kinds of bills introduced in the combined House and Senate side dealing with pro-life matters. 14. Man, they were going for the whole hog and then some. Everything they could grab, they went after. They decided to coalesce and focus on two things: the passage of the pro-abortion ERA and this change in the law regarding informed consent, the 24-hour waiting period, and the removal of ultrasound regulations, as well as allowing non-physicians to perform abortions. That's a massive chunk, and they bit it off hard, successfully. They did leave parental consent intact. We still have a partial birth abortion ban, and there are actually the restrictions on taxpayer-funded abortions have also been altered. We did have an opportunity last year successfully, when we had a one-vote majority, to remove the way we pay for abortions under Medicaid in Virginia. We are supposed to follow the Hyde Amendment law and the federal level, but we went one step beyond in Virginia, and we also now continue to kill babies who may be born with a severe disability. So your tax dollars are paying for that under our implementation of the Hyde Amendment rules in Virginia. So that was done this past year during the budget session. Stuff like that is going on behind your backs. You can't even complain if you don't know who your delegates are, if you don't know who your senator is. So I urge you to do that. But as I've been asked to speak specifically about the biggest threat that we see on the horizon, a huge threat. I do think there will be one other threat, and I will mention it at the end, and I would like to talk to some of you about it. The biggest threat that all of us are aware of is this so-called, we're calling it at VSHL, some of you who are on our list get lots of our emails about this already, we're calling it the Right to Abortion Amendment, because this nonsense of the Personal Reproductive Liberty Act is nothing more than euphemism 101. We've heard it before as pro-lifers. We know the way you play with words has all the power in the world. Words have meaning. 60% of our messages in this visual age is what the message looks like. 30% is what it sounds like, and 10% are the actual words that we hear. That's all we take away, 10%. So personal reproductive liberty has a marvelously stylish and easygoing way about it. The Right to Abortion Amendment is what it really is. The Right to Abortion Amendment, if passed, would in fact overturn all of our remaining pro-life laws in the blink of an eye and make it virtually impossible to ever again pass a substantial pro-life law of any kind. And the reason it would do that is because, as the courts have determined, any such law would be an impediment to a woman's access to her right to personal reproductive liberty. That's already been interpreted in states like Connecticut and other places where they've passed amendments like this. And it sort of makes me feel, again, as a student of history, kind of like, oh my gosh, we're kind of back in 1967, because this effort to pass this amendment in Virginia is the latest strategy from the pro-abortion hardcore element. And the reason they're going after it this way is they're going to go state to state. They're going to find the states that they think they have control and power in, try to pass an amendment like this, so that if and when Roe v. Wade is overturned, which really won't, as Victoria alluded to, doesn't automatically make abortion illegal anywhere, but if it should ever be overturned, when our grandchildren's day, this state would be a safe haven for abortionists. Their facilities would be able to operate without any imposition of any kind, without any regulations of any kind. No woman would ever be denied an abortion. What that really means is no abortionist would be restricted in their ability to coerce, lie, and manipulate women like myself. Frightened and afraid, worried and concerned, overwhelmed, being told that the only smart thing to do is to have an abortion. There would never again be a restriction on their ability to do that. We know that this is their plan because we know how many other states have already had legislation like this introduced. The process, as Victoria alluded to, is a long game. You can't just walk in and change the constitution of a state. It does take a minimum of 2 years. It has to be done in a specific order. There has to be one General Assembly session, during which time the amendment would have to successfully pass both the House and Senate. There has to be an election in between that session and the following session, the subsequent secondary session, where it would again have to pass both chambers. But there has to be an election of the House of Delegates in between. That's this year. Last year, they introduced this bill. They introduced it in 2019. So this has been on their trajectory for quite a while. They're planning this. Senator Boysko, if anybody is Senator Boysko's constituent, she introduced it in 2019. And last year, SJ2 is the bill number from last year's session. It doesn't have a bill number yet this year. SJ2 was introduced by our own Fairfax County Dick Saslaw. Who's Dick Saslaw's constituent? Anybody in here a Dick Saslaw constituent? Okay, well, you guys, you know how to reach him, and I know you do, Bill. So we've got work to do, communicating, and Ross, you do too. So knock on the door and say, no, thank you. This is where they're going, and they've planned it for a while. They passed it by last year because they knew the timing wasn't right. So it will be, and it will more than likely pass because, in all honesty, we don't have the votes to stop it next year. The election will become critical in between because if we can regain control, even a one-vote majority in the House would be nice again. We could stop this thing dead in its tracks, so it couldn't get to the second vote in 2022. But if we don't get control back, and it did manage to pass, it would go to a second vote in 2022, and they will pass it. At one point or another in this period, there has to be a ballot initiative. Now, pro-lifers in general do not like referendums and ballot initiatives, and we don't like them for a simple reason. It takes a phenomenal amount of money to successfully defeat referendums. Planned Parenthood, NARAL, George Soros, anybody you want to name is going to pour money in here, as they have been pouring money into this state for the last 4 years to get control of Virginia, and they will pour money into this state to make sure that this referendum passes. So we have obstacles in our path. There is one slim glimmer of hope for the 2021 session as far as we see it, and that is in the person of the lone pro-life Democrat in the Virginia Senate. We have one pro-life Democrat left in Virginia. We all need to pray for that man and pray that the party does not twist his arm and stop him from voting the right way should this thing come to the vote in the Senate. We believe that would possibly stop it, unless, and we don't know the constitutional variables on this because it's actually something that's kind of in play, we do not know whether, when he votes with the pro-lifers, which he did this year on the protection women's right to know law. The women's right to know law did not pass the Senate until, it was a tie vote, until the lieutenant governor voted to break the tie. And because we know that Justin Fairfax is solidly pro-abortion, he voted to defeat the pro-life law. So if he has the right to vote on this law, which is apparently constitutionally a little bit funky, we don't really know. There have been other cases where this has been brought up, and it isn't a settled issue. So we don't actually know whether he'd be allowed to vote on this or not. Technically, the law says only elected members of the General Assembly vote on constitutional matters, but it is still under debate. So we don't know, and I can't tell you. But it puts us in grave peril. It means that it is strongly possible it will pass next session. So what are you supposed to be doing? There is a flyer that's here. It was going to be, you all have it now. This flyer was going to be a PowerPoint, but we're having some technical difficulties. So we're going to let you take this home, make as many, you can go to our website, vshl.org. Please be aware, it's Virginia Society for Human Life.org. You see the information on the bottom of the page. Use it, because I know sometimes you don't put that H in the wrong place. You're going to end up at the Virginia High School Association. That's not where you want to go. So we have this wild name because we pre-exist the entire pro-life movement. But it's a heritage I'm proud of, because when I walk into the General Assembly and I say, I'm the president of the Virginia Society for Human Life, I'm here to speak to you about a pro-life bill, there is a historical legacy that VSHL carries. We did help then Delegate McDonald write and pass the Women's Right to Know law. We did carry the parental consent law through multiple variations through to its passage. The partial birth abortion ban that was brought forward by Senator Steve Newman, who's still there. This is a historical legacy, and so there is great respect, as there is respect for the Catholic Conference, obviously, and for Family Foundation. But the reality is that respect means responsibility, and it means that when we say, I have X number of people in your district who care about this issue, and some of them, who came to either one of the rallies? Who came to either one of the March for Lives? Anybody in this room? Yeah, a good number of you got on buses from up here and went down, or drove your friends down. It was awesome. Isn't it wild and crazy? It ain't enough. They have to be communicated with regularly. Even the ones on our side. There aren't any up here in Fairfax County anymore, but if you have friends or family who live elsewhere with friends on your side, and at this point it is party line divided, so you can figure it out for yourselves, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys in the General Assembly. But communicating with them, right? Thanking them for putting up with last year. If you know somebody who lives in a district with an R after their name, I would please tell them to call their delegate and senator and thank them. This has been a gruelingly hard year. Gruelingly hard on every single issue, but most definitely on the pro-life issue. I had men and women who are tough people coming up to me throughout that final process, knowing that there was nothing they could do to stop what was going to happen, and literally stopping me in tears, or like, I can't think anymore. I just need to let you know, my heart is broken today. These people fight hard sometimes. For the pro-lifers in the General Assembly, what happened this past year was mind-bendingly hard to cope with. And me saying, I'm here, I'm standing with you, I'm beside you, I feel your pain in the most real way. And for all of us saying, thank you for trying. Thank you for trying. None of us expected them to do miracles. So this is our opportunity to thank and to warn the people who will come up for election in 2019. We're watching and we're listening. And if something like this passes, we will remember. I don't know if some of these people can be afraid. They act like they can't be, but they need to know we're watching. So this is a critical moment for us to be aware, to be on top, to be paying attention. And I want to quickly just say this. The amendment is as bad as it sounds. If it doesn't come around this time, they'll keep trying if they have control. So as soon as we can get control back, the happier we will all be. Make sure you look for pro-lifers every time you walk out the door who want to run. And if somebody wants to run, get involved with consider it. Some of you may be the right person to challenge some of these unfortunate individuals who think they have the right to dictate to us that babies don't matter and life isn't important. I will quickly say two things. One, I think Jeff's going to talk about assisted suicide. You can talk about that? Okay. All right. Then I want to quickly say there are two other bills that I want to bring to your attention. You're welcome to chat with me. I have a little bit about them. One is a bill, and I really address this to men and women in the room who are business owners. There is a bill that ran last year, carried by Delegate Marcia Price, who's from down Richmond area way. Delegate Price patron HB 1445. It is a bill that it has many components. The key, really dangerous thing, among other things that it can do, is it will actually require all small business insurers, any nonprofit or for-profit industry, business, company, whatever, that insures any of their employees, they would be required to cover abortions under insurance plans offered to their employees. Now, VSHL ain't going to be doing that. We are not the Catholic Conference. We are not the Family Foundation. We are a non-sectarian organization. We're not Catholic. We're not Christian. We're not Jewish. We're anybody. We're everybody. Life belongs to all of us. We can't cover abortions under our insurance plans for our employees. National Right to Life is now working our offices are now in Alexandria, Virginia. They're not going to pay for abortions under their insurance plans. Students for Life of America is facing the same threat. They can't pay for abortions. Private businesses, if you have a dry cleaner shop and you employ 8 people and you cover them under your insurance plan, you would be required to pay for abortions under the plans you offer. Right now, you are not. There is something called the Weldon Amendment, which could disappear if a non-pro-life person is in the White House. It is not a permanent thing. It is sort of it's a conscience clause factor that was imposed against the state of California when they attempted to do the very same thing last winter. And the day before this bill was going to be heard at our General Assembly, the Weldon Amendment, news came down that California had been slapped with the Weldon Amendment, fining the state of California for trying to do this to private employers and nonprofits who have ethical exceptions. You don't have to have a religious exemption. Right now in Virginia, the code only protects religious institutions, a church, a school, a hospital that's defiantly, openly Christian, Catholic, Jewish, whatever, and they have a religious exemption. The Code of Virginia does not protect you if your objection is ethical. VSHL's objection is ethical. We are not a religious organization. It's an ethical objection. So you have no protection if Marcia Price's bill goes through. I have no doubt they're going to bring it forward because they kept it alive all summer and held a hearing in July at the Joint Health Care Commission, which is part of the mechanics of the General Assembly, where they discussed this. The only people involved in that conversation that afternoon, we were watching on Zoom, were pro-abortion advocacy groups. So we are looking for people interested in discussing with us about becoming what they call stakeholders or advocates against this proposal. So that's number one. And number two, so they'll go after parental consent. They're probably going to try to force everybody to cover abortion. And the other horrible thing about the bill that may get tied in is one from another senator who was going to require that every individual who works for a state institution as a nurse or a doctor or a physician's assistant or anything, nurse practitioner, anything along those lines, you would be required, if you work in a state-funded institution, to participate in the performance of abortions. So a care facility where they provide care to disabled people, or a prison, or if you do anything like that or know anybody in that, that bill from Senator Soroville could come back up and rear its ugly head this session as well. So that'll be the two things I think are going to come up on the pro-life issue along with the amendment. And the third thing, which would require an entire another session, and I kind of hope that Amy looks into this and the Respect Life office does it, would be the issue of physician-assisted suicide. We have a ban on physician-assisted suicide that VSHL worked on many years ago. Delegate O'Bannon carried it. It was a remarkably successful bill. It's one of the earlier ones in this country, and it still stands, and it's a protection against doctor-assisted suicide. There is an effort, we've been for 4 years now fighting against an effort 3 years, I guess it's been, Jeff, to prevent an effort to undercut and pull the rug out from under our ban on assisted suicide. They're calling it nice, fuzzy things like medical aid in dying. Again, more euphemisms. Medical aid in dying sounds just fine, except what it really is allowing individual doctors to prescribe lethal doses of prescription drugs with virtually no ramifications, no way of guaranteeing that the individual in question isn't dealing with depression or being coerced because they are not mentally capable of making a decision, and a caregiver is contriving a situation where they claim the individual would not want to live like this, give me the drugs, the individual dies. There's no way we can prevent any of these violations if this comes to pass. For a couple of years now, it's been held at bay. It is a kind of issue where, oddly enough, we may get both Republicans and Democrats on our side. So while you sometimes get a brick wall on the abortion issue, we're very hopeful that on this issue, we will see support across the aisle, because ultimately, it's about me now. You might end my life unwillingly. So we know that any state that has this type of law, we've seen grave violations against the disabled, the mentally incapacitated, and the elderly. So we are all part of a coalition called No Suicide Virginia. We formed it last year. We're trying very hard. If you're interested, if you are a part of a medical association or a nursing association or another law field, anything like that, you would like to talk to either Jeff or myself about maybe being more engaged, if you belong to something like that, we're looking for more partners to help to negotiate and maintain what we think could be an across-the-board support thing. So we're not always, and I'll tell you this, VSHL is definitely not Republican or Democrat. We have always and we will always work with any individual of any party who is prepared to step up and protect innocent, vulnerable human life. And that's how we operate together successfully. Thank you for letting me be a part of the day. Please stay in touch. God bless you all.
Thank you, Olivia. So before our final speaker, Jeff Caruso, wows you, like our other two speakers have wowed you, we're going to take a short break. We will come back here at the top of the hour. I will say that if you want to stretch your legs and walk outside, there is a voting registration booth there. Perhaps you're already registered to vote. Of course you are. But they want you to know they have information about the in-person voting, which begins on September 18th, college student absentee protocols, anything about change of address or names. If you need information for your parish, go on out there and chat with them. There is a myriad of beautiful resources along the bleacher. Please be sure and take some with you. And I will see you back here in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Again, we're back here this year with the entire wish list of everything the abortion industry could want to increase volume and profit. This is essentially abortion on demand up until the point of birth.
To the end of the third trimester.
Yep, I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
I had a similar bill that was even broader.
A woman is about to give birth. She has physical signs that she is about to give birth. Would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
I'm asking if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
We're hosting the first ever Virginia March for Life here in Virginia. We're excited. We're expecting several thousand people from across the state, and we're just excited to stand here on this beautiful day and support life.
Reject abortion, extremism, enrichment, and across our beloved Commonwealth.
There were 6,500 men, women, and children that showed up yesterday on the March for Life, and that was an incredibly enthusiastic crowd, but they were very clear on what their message was.
My mom and I were down there. It was a big crowd, probably one of the largest crowds I've seen outside of an inauguration.
It's amazing to see this many pro-lifers out here just taking a stand. We've obviously had some volatile bills in front of our legislature, things that we can't even imagine seeing passed in Virginia. So to see this many people stand out here to support the work that we're trying to do on behalf of all these Virginians, it's moving, it's powerful.
One does not define words.
I think that every pastor and every church needs to take the opportunity to stand up and speak out for life.
We can't defend the life of an individual, of a baby, before it even enters the world, then we're devaluing human life across the board.
Us standing with them, us standing for life, makes a difference, and it encourages those who are inside this building having to defend and bring forth legislation.
The most dramatic and resounding political and policy statement that was made yesterday did not take place on the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House.
Friends, this is the 1-minute warning, and a quick reminder that if you have questions, there is a basket in the back. There's going to be someone coming around with a basket for questions, so now is the time to write them out. If you've already written them, Nico here, up here at the front is Nico with the basket. If you'd like to put your question in, he's here, or he'll come to you if you raise your hand. Okay, Jeff, we're gonna do this thing.
I'm not a joke teller, so it has to be real.
Okay, my friends, please take your seats. We are going to resume. Everybody in live stream land, grab your coffee, get back to your comfy couch. Okay, we're going to have one last housekeeping announcement. Questions by live stream are being received by text. Don't hesitate to send them now. We will have a question and answer period after our next speaker. Those of you here in the room, there's a basket here, or you can hand them to Nico, raise your hand and he'll come and get them. We're happy to do that. And so our third and final speaker is Jeffrey Caruso, who is the founding executive director of the Virginia Catholic Conference, which, as you know from what Bishop said this morning, was created to advance the public policy interests of the Commonwealth's two Catholic bishops in the Diocese of Richmond and the Diocese of Arlington. Jeff is originally from Maryland, but he got to Virginia as quickly as he could. He spent 2 years practicing law in his native state, and then more than 6 years as one of the associate directors at the Maryland Catholic Conference. In January of 2005, Jeff became the first executive director of our Virginia Catholic Conference and opened its offices in Richmond. He currently serves on the Catholic Charities USA Social Policy Committee and the Catholic Virginian Board, and he has just completed a term as a consultant to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Subcommittee for the Promotion of the Defense of Marriage. Mr. Caruso graduated from the Pennsylvania State University in 1993 with a BS in Mathematics and Psychology, and then from the Notre Dame Law School in 1996. He and his family reside in the southern tip of the diocese in Fredericksburg, and they belong to St. Mary of the Immaculate Conception Catholic Church. Please join me in welcoming our friend in Richmond, Jeff Caruso.
Well, thank you, Amy, for the kind introduction. And I want to start out with just a very, very special thanks to the Office of Marriage, Family, and Respect Life, Amy and Therese and the entire team. Let's take a moment for a round of applause. Very challenging circumstances this year, and yet a wonderful crowd. It takes so much work to put on one of these events, and what an amazing job, an amazing event. So thank you. It's really a wonderful partnership that we have with these two organizations represented here, the Family Foundation and VSHL. And we've partnered with them the last 2 years on the State March for Life, as well as many of the issues that you've heard about already, all the ones relating to abortion, as well as the assisted suicide issue. So it's just it's really, really great to be collaborating with partners, and it's so important to have these coalitions and partnerships in Virginia. I'll also make a plug for Notre Dame, since that was mentioned in my intro. They are playing at 2:30 against Duke, so just saying, please tune in. And then also, Victoria made some comments in her presentation that kind of reminded me about a somewhat similar path that I took to advocacy. So I wanted not to digress too much, but I wanted to start off with that. So when I was in college, I started out wanting to be an actuary. And I think probably most of you know what an actuary is. I always get some questions about what that is, but if you don't know what an actuary is, see me later and I can explain. But that's what I originally wanted to be when I started college. Then I shifted to an interest in psychology, and then after I got done with the whole college experience, I decided to go to law school. Then I practiced law for 2 years. And then I figured out that I wanted to do the advocacy. And why do I mention all this? I just want to show how much smarter Victoria is than I am, because she figured it out in the 6th grade, all right? And it took me until I was in my late 20s, and lots of student loan debt, probably more than she had heaped up in there. So I just say that to congratulations to Victoria for figuring it out at such an early age. And maybe if I had that same teacher and that same course, and maybe if I'd written that paper and gone on that field trip, maybe I would have gotten into advocacy sooner than I did. But in any event, it's wonderful to be in the advocacy realm and participating in advocacy on these very important fundamental issues. The issue that I'm here to talk about is religious liberty, and religious liberty, of course, is closely tied into these issues of life and family that we've been hearing about, because in order for you to be able to practice your beliefs on life and family, you need religious liberty. So that's what I'm going to be addressing here today. I'm going to start out with a look back at the 2020 session and a few religious liberty issues, then go into what we foresee in 2021, the 2021 General Assembly session, and then end with an action item. So the 2020 session, two kind of big buckets, if you will, of religious liberty issues. One would be health mandates, and then secondly would be SOGI legislation, and I'll get into what that is in a minute. But when health mandates, I mean, I think the issue that everybody's probably the most familiar with is the one that we've been hearing about for the last decade at the federal level, which is the contraceptive mandate, and then that in turn led to the Little Sisters of the Poor case, which finally got resolved at the U.S. Supreme Court a couple months ago, with the Little Sisters prevailing after a long legal battle. So that's just kind of an example federally. Well, we deal with the same things at the state level. There are efforts to force health insurance plans to cover morally objectionable items and procedures at the state level as well. So Olivia talked a little bit about the work group that they formed to the so-called reproductive services health work group that we've all been tuning into, and that I think is going to continue to show itself over the next few months as we get into the 2021 session. But there actually was one health mandate that passed in the 2020 session, and that is a bill that would require, or it does require, health plans to cover gender reassignment surgeries and procedures. So that was something that we opposed, but unfortunately it passed. And the religious liberty arguments that we made were not successful in getting any sort of exemption added to the bill. But that's something just to say that there have been some health mandate bills considered already. One has passed. Others we see will be continued to be debated in the 2021 session. And then also the whole area of SOGI legislation. So what is SOGI? S-O-G-I. SOGI stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity. So that's kind of a shorthand. And then what is SOGI non-discrimination legislation? Well, it's basically, it seeks to add the terms sexual orientation and gender identity as criteria against which entities cannot discriminate. So we dealt with a whole host of SOGI non-discrimination bills during the 2020 session. What concerns us about SOGI non-discrimination legislation? To start out, it's important to note that the Catechism says that the Church opposes all unjust discrimination. So we certainly do oppose all unjust discrimination, but it's just and it's essential to be able to follow our religious beliefs based on a correctly formed conscience. So the problem becomes that sometimes courts interpret the terms sexual orientation and gender identity within non-discrimination laws very, very broadly. So broadly that they would prohibit religious organizations from acting according to their beliefs, like the ones that we hold about marriage and human sexuality. So that's really kind of the conundrum, if you will, is that sexual orientation and gender identity doesn't even mean just orientation, but depending on how courts interpret these, they can be interpreted very broadly to get into the area of religious belief and preventing people from being able to follow the law on the one hand and practice their religious beliefs at the same time on the other hand. So it becomes a matter for court interpretation. And then it becomes discrimination simply to make decisions that are consistent with your beliefs, again, depending on how a court interprets these. So religious employers and churches and schools and other ministries, of course, have a right and a duty to practice their beliefs, including the belief that God created each person as male or female, and established marriage as the union of a man and a woman. So that's really what the debate is all about for us, is being able to practice these beliefs about marriage and human sexuality. In the past, these SOGI non-discrimination bills were defeated at the General Assembly each year. I began at the Virginia Catholic Conference in 2005, and in each year since then, up until the 2020 session, SOGI legislation was defeated. But unfortunately, it did pass in the 2020 session, and it passed without the types of religious liberty protections that we were seeking to add to these bills. So in areas such as employment and public accommodation and housing, these new criteria of sexual orientation and gender identity are a part of Virginia's non-discrimination laws. And again, the amendments that we sought to try to ensure appropriate religious liberty protections were really just thwarted at every turn. So that was 2020. Now, shifting to 2021, how are these health mandates and SOGI issues going to potentially play out in 2021? Well, again, in the health mandates arena, we're closely following this reproductive health services working group that was formed by a House committee. They had one meeting during the summer. We're anticipating they may have at least one other meeting before the 2021 session. That may be an opportunity for some people to have an opportunity to weigh in, so we'll keep people informed. But depending on the outcome of that work group, we're probably somewhat likely to see health mandate legislation in some form in the 2021 session. And one form, and the worst of all possible forms that could take, would be that it could be legislation to require health plans to cover contraception, sterilizations, and even abortion. So it's something that we're very much keeping an eye on and being vigilant about, and looking for opportunities, not only for our organizations to participate, because they hear from us all the time, but to get other newer voices to participate in these debates. One thing that was mentioned is that during the special session that's currently ongoing at the Virginia General Assembly, they've shifted to virtual committee hearings. And while that's somewhat of a disadvantage for lobbyists, in another respect, it can be an advantage for people who live further away and want to participate in the committee process, because what we used to have to do is watch for committee hearings. You don't get a lot of advance notice. You might know the night before when a committee hearing is going to be the next morning during the General Assembly session. And then it was very hard to try to get people who live far away to come to Richmond and sit in a committee either all morning or all afternoon to testify for 2 minutes. But with these virtual processes, if they continue, on the one hand, that is kind of disappointing for public participation. But on the other hand, it can be an opportunity for people who live farther away from Richmond, such as in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and Southwest Virginia, to sign up to get into a Zoom meeting and participate in a committee hearing, namely to testify for or against a piece of legislation. So there's a lot of opportunities for public participation from across the state that maybe weren't available when committees were all in person. And again, I hope they go back to being in person. I think it's much better for meaningful public input that way. But just know that there might be this virtual opportunity come January for people that live a couple hours away from Richmond to be able to sign up for committee hearings. So we'll keep you posted on that. But that's what might be on tap with health mandates in the 2021 session. SOGI legislation, we think that's coming back in the 2021 session as well. One way that we think that might come back is in the area of adoption and foster care. So on that, I'm going to kind of trace back to a debate that we've been involved in for about the last decade on adoption and foster care, and that is the conscience law. And it's a conscience law we currently have in Virginia. So back during the 2012 General Assembly session, much different period of time, much different composition of the General Assembly, working with the Family Foundation and other groups, we were able to get a bill passed that says that a faith-based adoption agency can serve vulnerable children and families and follow their faith, such as their beliefs about marriage. So it protected the conscience rights of faith-based adoption agencies. Specifically, the bill says that a child placing agency, I'm going to use the term child placing because that means both adoption and foster care, okay? So a child placing agency cannot be required to participate in a placement that would violate their religious or moral beliefs. An agency cannot be denied a license because they do not participate in these placements. They cannot be denied a grant, a contract, or an opportunity to participate in programs by the government because they do not participate in placements that violate their beliefs. And they can't be sued because they don't participate in placements that violate their beliefs. So, as you know, Catholic charities and some other faith-based charities believe that marriage is the union of a man and a woman, and they seek to practice that belief within the services they provide. So that's really kind of the need and the importance of the conscience law that we have in place. We were the second state in the country to adopt this conscience law. And currently, I think there's 10 states that have the conscience law, but it's the subject of litigation in one state, and then in another state that doesn't have a conscience law, there's also some litigation that stemmed from the city of Philadelphia, and that has bubbled up to the Supreme Court. So we think there's going to be a Supreme Court decision about the adoption and foster care space and conscience rights within that sometime next year, perhaps in June of next year. There might be a U.S. Supreme Court decision on that. So again, that speaks to the importance of who serves in our judiciary. Judges are very important in terms of protecting not only life but also religious liberty. Yes, this issue is winding its way through the courts, but also we think there's going to be legislation during the 2021 session that's going to try to repeal the good and very important conscience law that we have on the books now. We saw the bill in 2020. Fortunately, it was defeated in committee. We were very impressed with the number of parents and adoptive parents and others that operate in the adoption and foster care space did a great job of mobilizing, getting people to several hearings during the 2020 session, and a bill that sought to repeal the adoption and foster care conscience law was defeated in committee, and in a bipartisan way, and legislators recognize the great work that faith-based agencies do. They recognize that prospective adoptive parents and birth moms want choices, and including the choice of being able to work with a faith-based agency. And so that debate turned out our way in 2020, but it's not over. It's coming back in the 2021 session. And we need all hands on deck to continue to protect that conscience law. Because we need all hands on deck in the adoption and foster care space. Some birth moms, some prospective adoptive parents, specifically seek out a faith-based agency because that agency shares their values. And an argument that we will continue to make is it's important for everybody to be able to participate in serving vulnerable children and families, and faith-based agencies have a critical role to play, as well as people who go to those faith-based agencies specifically because they share those beliefs. So the foster care issue in particular is one where we really need all hands on deck. We don't need less providers. We need more. We need more providers and more options and more choices. So that's going to be a really important debate during the 2021 session. There have been some states that have gone in the opposite direction from a conscience law. So we're one of 10 that has the good conscience protection. There are some states that not only don't have a conscience protection, but the state has actually said that if you discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, which as applied in this context would mean if you don't adhere to the belief that marriage is the union of a man and a woman when you provide your services, then you can't participate in the adoption and foster care space. And that has meant in states such as Massachusetts and Illinois, and also in the District of Columbia, and that has meant that Catholic Charities in some of those places have had to stop providing adoptions. So, we certainly want to protect the ability of faith-based adoption agencies to perform their vital work here in Virginia. We certainly have a strong case to make. It's a case that resonated during the 2020 session, but it's a case that we're going to have to continue to make even stronger during the 2021 session. So that leads to an opportunity. You've heard opportunities already to engage in advocacy, and I encourage you to take advantage of each one of those. But also in terms of the Virginia Catholic Conference Network, I'm going to give you the tech and the non-tech way to sign up for the Virginia Catholic Conference Network. Well, first of all, how many people are already in? How many people receive our regular email alerts? Okay, great. Looks like about half of you. For the other half of you, we'd love to have you in. We need all the participation we can get. The first way to sign up is through text. So if you want to sign up through a text message, what you want to do is text 50457, and what you want to text VCC to 50457. So VCC standing for Virginia Catholic Conference, and doesn't matter whether it's all caps or not, but it's not case sensitive. But VCC, and the number again is 50457. So text VCC to 50457. If you do that, you're going to receive a link, and then you just click on the link and you type in your name, your address, your email, and then that's it. You'll be signed up for our alert network. You'll get regular alerts and updates from us. The other way to sign up, I think most of you have a Virginia Catholic Conference brochure on your tables. There is a tear-off form on the back of the brochure. So if you would like to sign up that way, just fill out the tear-off form and give that to me at the end, and I'll take that back to the office and we'll get you enrolled. So either way, we hope you'll participate. Just one example of why it's so important to advocate, and this kind of ties back into the assisted suicide issue that Olivia mentioned. So a couple years ago, there was a study, a 2-year study by a joint commission of the General Assembly. And it was a study on the issue of Virginia's current ban on assisted suicide. And they were looking at should Virginia continue the ban on assisted suicide, or should they move in the direction of states like California and Colorado that have legalized assisted suicide? So studied the issue for 2 years, and it culminated in a public comment period. During the comment period, advocates against assisted suicide outnumbered advocates for assisted suicide by an 8-to-1 margin when they submitted comments on the electronic platform that the Virginia General Assembly Commission provided. By an 8-to-1 margin, that is. And why was that? Well, it was because the Virginia Catholic Conference and VSHL and the Family Foundation were all urging people to weigh in with their comments before the commission decided this. So thanks to emails, or public comments, I should say, that many of you submitted after seeing that on our network or on the network of our partnering organizations, thanks to that input, the commission heard loud and clear that Virginians don't want to change the ban on assisted suicide. And that was the decision that the commission in turn made. They made the decision to keep Virginia's law as is. Now again, that was a different time and place. We have a new composition of the General Assembly, so we do expect that issue to continue to ramp up and to be a threat in the future. It's been a threat in Maryland, I know. The Maryland General Assembly has considered it for a number of years now. So it's something that has come to our region, and it's something that's going to be very important for us to continue to advocate against. But I just cite that as a really, really good example of why it's so important to weigh in and participate. So I'm done with the infomercial now, but if you would sign up for the Virginia Catholic Conference email network, we would be so grateful. That's all I have to say. I know that the next segment is for questions, so I want to be sure to allow plenty of time for that. Thank you.
Well, I know you'll join me in thanking again our three amazing speakers for taking time out of their Saturday, but most especially for their stalwart witness, for being in the trenches. So as we thank them, let us also pledge to cover them in prayer, to continue to cover them in prayer, especially during the General Assembly, and to respond when they call. So, as Jeff said, according to the schedule, the next thing is the Q&A, and we are going to have a Q&A, but I thought, being a multitasker and knowing many of you pro-lifers are good at multitasking, that I would make the housekeeping announcements now to give you a moment to write out any last questions that you have and ring them up and put them in the basket, or raise your hand and Nico will come and get them. So that way you'll have time, if you have questions for Jeff, to put those down. The announcements are simple and quick, but they start with thank you. Thank you to the Executive Director of the Office for Marriage and Family Life, the one and only Therese Bernpohl, who doesn't like to be thanked, but we love you and thank you for your leadership of our office with particular grace and wisdom in this nutty time. I also want to thank from the bottom of my heart Monica Darnell, who also doesn't want to be thanked, but who holds up the sky and took care of all the details and made this conference so comfortable and smooth. And thank you to Monica. And I also want to thank my colleague Nico, who was the mastermind behind the movie. And last but certainly not least, my other colleague and friend, Sarah LaPierre, who, as many of you know, is the director of the Gabriel and Rachel Outreach Projects, and does amazing work walking with moms in need every day. And of course, one of the most important ways that the diocese walks with moms in need is through our Gift for Life program, which is a bucket of money that we use to accompany expectant families in need from, I like to say, from soup to nuts. So from positive pregnancy test to delivery and beyond if they need it. We also have a one-time rent assistance or utilities assistant. The Gift for Life program is critical to having this fund, and our need, as you don't need me to tell you, has only increased in this time of COVID. So we will continue our tradition of having tree tags for the Christmas trees in the back of church, giving tags. If you are a parish Respect Life coordinator, please don't leave without seeing Monica. Will you stand up just so they can see you, and Sarah and the back, and get your, don't leave without your tree tags, please, for Gift for Life. And you're all busily writing questions, right? Okay. All right. So also, I want to make sure that you all know about an exciting new project that rolled out this summer, prayforlife.org. Prayforlife.org. You're going to go there because it is chock full of resources to help expectant moms in need. But it's primarily designed to support the folks I like to call the sidewalk saints. So many of you we see on the sidewalks, and you're very, very committed to the 3 abortion facilities in our diocese, to praying on the sidewalk. We want more people praying on the sidewalk, but we don't want anyone to feel like, I don't know when to go, I don't know, excuse me, which days to go, I don't know what to do. So you can go to prayforlife.org and sign up, and you can see the 3 facilities there. You can sign up for a time to pray. Any information you put on the site is completely secure. You will not be identified, but you will be seen by the site administrator, Maureen Barrett, who is, Maureen, will you stand up? Okay, Maureen's going to be available to demo the site, to talk to you. And in particular, this is very important for my parish pro-life leaders. You know that 40 Days for Life is starting on the 25th of this month, okay? And if you're turning out your people to pray, this is a scheduling software for you to use, and you can sign up to be a group leader for your parish. So check in with Maureen. This is amazing software that was done almost gratis by a talented young web designer, has a day job, but he's just all in, pro-life kid and smart as a whip. So I said, sure, marry my daughter. That works. No pressure. Anyway, it's a great website, and we'd like to see it go all over the country, but we got to test run it here. So if you're popping in, you know, to the sidewalk even for 30 minutes, sign up. Let us know you're coming. It might encourage someone else to come. Okay, that's about as fast as I can talk. Anything I've forgotten? Questions? Last questions? Oh, Sarah, yes, we have amazing, as I said, resources on the side, and I hope that you'll all go home, especially with the tear-off tabs for the Project Rachel retreats for the bathrooms. Make sure your pastor approves, put them up. You'll also see a teal brochure there that has it's like a condensed resource. It's to be used when you're on the sidewalk praying. So if there's a need that a mama has, you can answer it right then, okay? And that is also tied into Plan for Her VA, which is another amazing website, all linked on prayforlife.org. And just quickly, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to our Knights of Columbus, who funded the production of this amazing resource to walk with moms in need. Okay, so all your questions are in or have been texted, and so we're going to start with those now. Vanna? Do you want me to read them, or?
I think you probably should read them. Make sure that
Are they addressed to particular people?
they're not. So I didn't look at the ones in the basket, so here's a couple more.
Okay.
And I think some of these are direct, but I just have to say, and I know that Amy doesn't want to be thanked, but really this was put together by Amy, so we are so blessed to have her in our diocese, and so thank you, Amy.
So time for questions. Okay. Okay, a little masking tape, no, electronic tape. Okay, and so are the microphones, we're going to ask our speakers to speak into the microphones, and they're all set, Matt? Hey, oh, I'm a bad person. I did not thank the diocesan communication team. Thank you to Matt and Jim, because, you know, Satan would have had the whole day with the technology if you hadn't been here. So, all right. Now, I'm going to ask the speakers, in the interest of time, because we're going to pray and end it at noon. Talk fast or talk short. Those are your choices. So, yeah, like I should listen to my own advice. Okay. So the first question is for Victoria. It says, I have a 13-year-old daughter who feels called to work in the pro-life battle. She's even thought of starting a YouTube channel on this. How should I encourage her?
Awesome. I have a 14-year-old, and actually my Facebook memory today was that 5 years ago today I shared the issue of abortion with my child who was then basically 9, and she was so sad and couldn't understand
for kids. Right now, all the door knocking that's happening, we have a lot of kids. We're actually running a program, we're working in the 7th district primarily, and we're actually running a program that encourages kids to take 10, we give them a walk book, and all the people on their walk book are targeted. We think they're conservatives, we think they're pro-life, but they're not registered in the district. And so for every 10 houses, we gift card these kids for getting 10 houses registered. So there's really a lot kids can do in this ministry, and certainly praying outside the sidewalk is a great place to start too.
To build on that, I just want to let everybody know that
summer camp.
We couldn't do this year because of COVID, but we have 3 ways that young people are encouraged to get involved in VSHL. First, in the fall, we have the Helen Donovan Essay Contest for high school students. We publish a subject. The students across Virginia are welcome to write an essay. There is a scholarship prize for that, but the prizes are awarded in January, shortly before January 22nd. We have a springtime oratory contest. So we have the essay contest in the fall. We have a spring oratory contest for our junior and senior age children, homeschooled, everybody's homeschooled now, but homeschooled or in regular school situations. And then in the summer, VSHL also sponsors a teen camp. And one of our more recent teen camp graduates is here with us today. We're delighted to see Dom. But we have a great time at that camp. It's only a 3-day camp, but we have a grand time. We hold it out in Stanton, Virginia. So along with Family Foundation, we're all trying to get our young people more educated, more comfortable talking about the issue, and more in their own head about how they want to participate in protecting innocent life.
Okay, I think this one's going to be for Jeff. Does the VCC plan to release a side-by-side guide informing voters on where each of the presidential candidates stand on critical moral issues? And how are the faithful going to know?
Thank you for the question. The answer is a resounding yes. I anticipate that we are going to be releasing the presidential candidate side by side, as well as the Virginia Bishop's pre-election letter sometime next week. So please stay tuned. And that's another reason to sign up for the Virginia Catholic Conference email network. We will be sending that out on the email network in both English and Spanish. Again, I don't know the exact date of the release, but I'm pretty sure that it's going to be sometime next week. So thank you for the question.
VSHL will also be putting out a comparison piece. Our PAC director finalized it this week. It will go up on our website as a strict comparison piece. It is something that you can use in any setting because it is not a political action. It doesn't say who to vote for, so we encourage you. We'll also be sending it to anyone who signs up, sign a petition on our website, become a member, or just sign up to get emails. All of this will be available through VSHL connections very soon. Strictly on the abortion issue, so that'll help a little bit too. Thank you.
Yeah, we're actually just encouraging as another program. We're not producing it, so these are probably just yeah. Okay, good. Great. So this is a question for our people experts here. Did recent laws eliminate the biannual safety inspection of abortion facilities by the Virginia Department of Health?
I think we just need to make sure the live feed is hearing mostly out of this.
Okay.
If you speak loudly, they'll pick it up.
Okay.
I'm sorry. So
did the recent laws, the slaughters of 20, did that eliminate the biannual safety inspection of abortion facilities by the Virginia Department of Health?
yes, there are no longer officially required inspections, which is tragic.
There are numbers. Okay. Someone wants to know how we should vote on the redistricting amendment on this year's ballot.
I so appreciate that question because we laid out the cause that is going to happen in 2021. How important for us to get back one of these chambers to block this constitutional amendment. This is 2020, right? So redistricting every 10 years. We do believe at the Family Foundation the best shot for districts that are the most fair to get pro-life candidates would be if we vote for this ballot amendment. It was originally very supported by the Democrat Party and some Republicans. Now there's a lot of folks backing off of it because the Democrats have control, so there's a little bit more like, we got it, we want to be the ones in charge. I would strongly encourage you to vote yes on your ballot this year in hopes that the districts are more fair for pro-lifers.
Say the name of the amendment again more clearly and slowly.
It is the redistricting amendment. It's on your ballot this year, but it will impact next year's districts, therefore next year's House races and Senate races, frankly.
Okay. Anybody else want to respond? Jeff, you want to respond? Okay. All right. So this question, I'm going to combine, with apologies, I'm combining a few questions in the interest of time, but which delegates and senators are most vulnerable to public pressure on life issues? Are there swing votes we should focus our attention on? And also, you mentioned one pro-life Democrat, if we could have that person's name.
Definitely the starting point is that senator. It's Joe Morrissey. He's a Richmond down to Petersburg Senate district. He needs to be held accountable and has said he's pro-life, voted pretty well this session on life. So really have to put pressure in his district. If you know anyone in his district, to be on it. The other one that we really believe, to stay pro-life and support our work with the life issues. The other one is Senator Chap Peterson. We really believe that because there's a similar faith there that we just need to keep nudging him. That's one that we work very hard on. I don't know if you guys want to add anybody.
Yeah, I would definitely say Senator Chap Peterson voted conservative on a variety of issues. He did not vote with us on the pro-life issue, but there is clearly, we've been advised that he is one who might be influenced if he heard from solid constituencies. So if you know people in Senator Peterson's district, it's kind of a mid-Fairfax County area. And you know, never give up on anybody. You don't know what might persuade someone. So definitely talk to Chap. Be very polite to Senator Morrissey. If you know people in his district, he hasn't done the wrong thing, he's done the right thing. So that's an example of a place where the kind of messaging has to be, thank you. We appreciate, he verbally sat me down and said he wants to do more to be constructively forward-thinking on the pro-life issue. So he wants to be seen as a good guy and wants to do the right thing. In order to help guys like that, never badger them, never say, you better do the right thing. Always say, we understand this is a very complicated issue, but we are grateful that in the face of what may be a lot of pressure, you are willing to do the right thing for mothers and their children. So that's very important. Tone matters with a lot of these people. So just know that when you're seeking the really, really bad guys, you can say whatever you want. the guys in the middle, and there aren't too many, so when we say this, there really aren't too many, that I would point to as potentially viable for us to switch in the Democrat Party bloc right now. But those two, one needs to be held up and maintained, the other needs to be urged to follow his instinct to break from his party from time to time and do what he can do on the right side.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add. I agree with everything that's been said. And just to reiterate the importance of advocating with charity and civility. I think that really does make a difference. I mean, if they're hearing from lots of folks and the people in the pro-life movement are advocating in that tone that Olivia emphasizes, I think that can be a really winning strategy, especially with folks that are on the fence.
I'm just going to quickly say, listen, never stop writing, even if they give you that lovely form letter, the form letter that comes so often. The point is, you need to remember, they count every letter, they count every email, they count every phone call. And your neighbors and friends don't believe that, but we're in those offices, and we're told by our friends and our enemies, I'm not getting any phone calls, I haven't gotten any emails, I don't think you're out there. Yeah, we show up in a big mass and a big clump, but we need to be heard all the time because it makes it very hard for them, the pro-abort side, to then say, we don't believe we have anything to worry about. And as I said earlier, what we need to be doing right now is, even if they're hardcore, like Senator Saslaw or Senator Boysko or Delegate Herring or Delegate Fillercorn, who are rock hard, solid on the pro-abortion issue, you need to be aware that they all want to be reelected.
They all want to run for higher office.
And so they want to run for Victoria's, they want to run for higher office. So if you have friends who've never written, who don't know how to write, who don't know how to send it, go to our Legislative Action Center. Each of us have one on our websites. That's the easiest way to do it. But even if you just send a note, any way you want to, your delegates have a responsibility to hear from you. And don't let anybody say, there's no point in me contacting so-and-so, they stink. That's bad thinking. That's not going to help us, okay?
Our job is not to win. Our job is to show up and be faithful. I think Mother Teresa said something about that too, right? Mm-hmm. This is our call. And we're in it for the long haul. We're in it for eternity. So, yeah, charity and clarity, never stop. And yes, it is a bummer moment. But discouragement is from the evil one. And so we can feel the sadness. We can feel the sorrow. We can unite it to the cross and soldier on, right? That's our mission. And sometimes we feel, as my mother, Lord rest her, would say, mad as H-E double toothpicks. But that you leave at home, okay? And so you bring, what are we doing? We are bringing Christ to the culture. And if not us, who? You know, in the previous election cycle, I remember in 2016, it was interesting. It was the first time we saw the statistics from the Pew Research Trust saying that previously the largest demographic of registered voters was American Catholics in the low 20%. But for the first time, that number dropped to second place, and it was exceeded by the nuns. I said this once to some Sisters of Life, and they lit up. They were like, that's wonderful. And I'm like, no, sister, not the N-U-N-S's. The N-O-N-E-S's, right? The people who self-identify as no faith. What faith? None. That's the box you check. So my question for us is, if we are not bringing Christ to the culture, who is? Okay, so bring Christ, leave the mad as toothpicks at home, and keep going. Keep going. We shall overcome. The victory has been won. We know this, right? So, next question. I think this is free for all. Did the legislation to prevent licensed counselors, therapists from counseling questioning youth with truth get passed? And if so, is the license of a therapist at risk for revocation? This is Jeff, I think
I would love to give you great answers on this. The answer is yes, it passed, and yes, licenses are at stake if someone challenges the counsel that a counselor is given. What this means is that youth who struggle with same-sex attraction or struggle with gender dysphoria, if they want to return to being either heterosexual or and the way I like to say it is this: it's fine if you have gender confusion, your thinking is not lining up with your biology, right? Your feelings, your emotions, your head. We're fine. The whole culture, and in Virginia professionally, we can tell them you may change your body to line up with your thinking. But now these kids have no help to change their heart, feelings, and thinking to line up with their body. We are looking to litigate. Family Foundation has opened a law center, Founding Freedom's Law Center. We are looking to challenge that. So a counselor who's willing to put themselves on the line so that we can take that to court. There are challenges around the country on this issue. We believe the U.S. Supreme Court could rule very favorably that this is a free speech issue, that you do not surrender your free speech because you got a professional license. So we really believe this has hope, but we're going to have to run it through the courts.
I have a question. Does that include pedophilia too? If somebody
I think youth with same-sex attraction and their counselors. We have a question from the floor. I'm doing this for the live stream, asking about people who are struggling with pedophilia and whether or not they can be counseled.
I think you could interpret it that way, the language, because it's a sexual orientation, but Jeff, what do you think? I didn't explicitly exclude it.
Minor attracted.
I'd have to take a look at the statute.
It's addressing children, though, so...
Adults are minor.
Yeah, so it probably really doesn't.
So it's okay if an adult comes in and is searching for counseling
away from pedophilia. That should still be okay.
That was not in the law. The law addressed the counseling of children.
But if you're a 17-year-old,
Yeah.
with problems with
Right.
younger.
But yeah, you get 17 once they're 18, boy. Okay, Jeff, while you have the microphone, a number of people have asked if we have a date for the next Virginia State March for Life yet. Do we have that?
No.
No.
Not yet.
No, I think we're a few conference calls away, right?
We don't know what's
Okay,
going to happen with
so
COVID.
you'll hear. Don't worry. You know, it'll be all over the diocesan website. You're all plugging in here 3 times. You will not miss the announcement. But again, if all we do is march in January or once in Richmond, then we're not gonna win this victory. Okay. A few people have asked to ask the organizations how individuals can give their time to support each organization. I think in the interest of time, I'm just going to say everyone's website is on all the material that you have. All the information you need is going to be there. Also, one other housekeeping thing is, with apologies to those in the room who could not see the PowerPoint and video that Victoria sent, I will be following up with everyone after the conference, and you will get those materials in your email. So now that I know where you live online, you'll keep hearing from me. Okay, this is going to be our last question, and I really like this question. If I can only do one thing in the next 6 months, in addition to voting, it says, what should that one thing be? Rapid fire. Go, Jeff.
Pray.
Become a member.
Yeah, I would say it's making sure you're getting all the information because they'll give you reactions at the time. So make sure you're connected to each source for how to engage that.
Okay. Wonderful. One final round of applause for our amazing panel. God bless you all. And now ask Father Ferguson, paging Father Thomas Ferguson, who will please come up, pastor of Good Shepherd, who's going to close us in prayer. And again, from my heart, thank you, all of you watching online. Congratulations for making it through a long remote event. Thank you all for coming. You inspire me. I thank God for you, and I'm here to support you in your pro-life outreach in any way I can. Let me hear from you. Father?
Thank you. Amy asked me to conclude the day this morning with prayer, and specifically she asked if I would lead us all together in praying the Angelus. And I guess I would say there's probably no more appropriate prayer that we could offer to come to the end of our time together this morning. As you know, the Angelus is a prayer that helps us to sanctify the day. We offer it first thing in the morning and at noon and in the evening. The Angelus is also an appropriate prayer for us today as we honor Our Lady on this memorial of the Holy Name of Mary. And anytime we gather to consider what we can do by the grace of God to protect the lives of the unborn, perhaps the Angelus is the most appropriate prayer we can offer, because it's that prayer that draws us into remembering the words of the Scripture that take us to that moment in time of the mystery of the Incarnation, but what really is the conception of our Lord Jesus when he took on our humanity in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Today is also the National Day of Remembrance for unborn children, and so this would be an occasion for us to participate in that remembrance by taking this moment to pray together for the unborn children who are in their mother's womb right now, that they may all come to a safe and live birth, and for those children who were not given the opportunity to be born because they died in their mother's womb through abortion. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. The angel of the Lord declared unto Mary,
And she conceived by the Holy Spirit.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
Behold the handmaid of the Lord.
Be it done unto me according to thy word.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
And the Word became flesh. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
Pray for us, O Holy Mother of God.
That we may be made worthy of the promises of Christ.
Let us pray. Pour forth, we beseech thee, O Lord, thy grace into our hearts, that we, to whom the incarnation of Christ thy Son was made known by the message of an angel, may by his passion and cross be brought to the glory of his resurrection, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen. The Lord be with you. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Go in peace.